I don't know if you can, really. She's one of one. She's the fastest player in the league with the ball in her hand. I don't know if you can, really.
Stephanie White just executed the most deliberate, public, undeniable power shift in Indiana Fever history. And she did it with cameras rolling, reporters watching, and Caitlin Clark sitting at home on injury reserve, completely unable to respond. After the Fever's grinded-out win against Phoenix, Stephanie White stood at that podium and delivered a 5-minute monologue about Kelsey Mitchell that was so effusive, so detailed, so absolutely reverent that you would have thought she was describing the greatest player in WNBA history. She called Kelsey Mitchell one of one. She said there is nobody in the league who can make the shots Kelsey makes. She praised her endurance, her speed, her relentlessness, her ability to score while defenders are hanging all over her. And this is the part that should terrify every single Caitlin Clark fan watching this video. Aliyah Boston sat right next to Stephanie White in that same press conference and co-signed every single word of it. Aliyah did not defend Caitlin. She did not mention Caitlin's name once. She did not push back on the new hierarchy Stephanie White just installed. She nodded along, smiled, and made it abundantly clear that she is on board with the new regime. This is Kelsey Mitchell's team now, not Caitlin Clark's. Kelsey's, welcome back. This is Hoops Vision Daily, and today we are documenting the exact moment the Indiana Fever officially chose sides, and the losing side is sitting at home rehabbing an ankle injury with no idea what just happened to her franchise. Before we get into what Stephanie White said word for word at that podium, I need you to understand the context that makes this so brutal. Caitlin Clark has been out for 3 games. 3 games, not 3 weeks, not 3 months, 3 games. And in those 3 games, Kelsey Mitchell has averaged over 25 points per game. She has taken over 30 shot attempts in 2 of those 3 contests, and she has operated as the primary ball handler in crunch time while the entire offensive system has been redesigned around her isolation scoring. Stephanie White did not just let this happen. She engineered it, she drew up the plays, she called the timeouts. She put the ball in Kelsey's hands in the final 3 minutes of a tied game against Phoenix and told her, "Go win this for us." And Kelsey did. She hit step-back threes with defenders in her face. She attacked downhill and finished through contact. She made the drive and kick passes that Stephanie White specifically praised in the press conference. Kelsey Mitchell is playing like the franchise player right now because Stephanie White is treating her like the franchise player. And Caitlin Clark is about to come back to a completely different team than the one she left. Let me be entirely clear with you. This is not a temporary adjustment while Caitlin is out. This is a permanent power shift. Stephanie White has been waiting for this opportunity since the day she was hired. She inherited a team that was built around Caitlin Clark's playmaking, Caitlin Clark's pace, Caitlin Clark's vision. And Stephanie White did not want that team. She wanted a team that plays through isolation scoring, that hunts mismatches in the post, that grinds games out in the half-court. That is Kelsey Mitchell's game. That is not Caitlin Clark's game. And now that Stephanie White has had 3 games to install her system without Caitlin on the floor to complicate it, she is not going back. The receipts are in the press conference. The receipts are in the rotation, the receipts are in the shot distribution, and the receipts are in what Aliyah Boston said and did not say when she sat next to Stephanie White and validated every single word of the new hierarchy. Stephanie White took to that podium after the Phoenix game and delivered the most glowing, specific, detailed praise of Kelsey Mitchell that I have ever heard a head coach give to any player in any press conference in the WNBA this season. She was asked to put Kelsey's performance in perspective, and instead of giving a polite 30-second answer, Stephanie White went on a full monologue. She described Kelsey as the fastest player in the league with the ball in her hands. She talked about Kelsey's ability to change direction on a dime, to gear down and then explode again, to score while defenders are draped all over her. She said Kelsey's endurance is incredible. She said the team relies heavily on Kelsey. She said, and I want you to listen closely to this phrase because of what it signals, I'm thankful she's on our team. That is the language you use for franchise cornerstone. That is the language you use for someone you are building around. That is not the language you use for complementary piece. Stephanie White just told the entire, with cameras rolling, that Kelsey Mitchell is the player she is most grateful to have on her roster. Not Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell. And here's the part that nobody on ESPN is going to say out loud. Stephanie White has never spoken about Caitlin Clark this way, not once, not in a single press conference since she took the job. She has praised Caitlin's passing, she has acknowledged Caitlin's shooting, but she has never called Caitlin one of one. She has never said there is nobody in the league who can do what Caitlin does. She has never delivered a 5-minute monologue about Caitlin's relentlessness, Caitlin's endurance, Caitlin's ability to make impossible plays. Stephanie White's body language, her tone, her word choice when she talks about Kelsey Mitchell is completely different than when she talks about Caitlin Clark. And if you have been watching this team closely, and I have been documenting this since the day Stephanie White was hired, you already know why. Stephanie White does not believe Caitlin Clark is the best player on this team. She believes Kelsey Mitchell is, and she just said it on camera. Don't take my word for it. The villain said it herself. Watch this.
Aliyah, it's Obviously, nice to see you back out there. What was your mindset going into tonight? Because you did look pretty comfortable out there.
Yeah, I think for me, just making sure that I'm efficient, shoot the ball with confidence, but just be a great post presence. We know that AT likes to facilitate, so for me, just trying to make her job hard, make her more of a scorer tonight, and just be me.
She said it with cameras rolling, with reporters scribbling notes, with the entire basketball world watching. She's one of one, she's the fastest player in the league with the ball in her hands. One of one, that is the phrase you use when you believe there is nobody else like this player in the entire league. That is the phrase you use when you are making it clear to everyone listening that this player is irreplaceable, that this player is the foundation of everything you are trying to build. Stephanie White just told you in plain English on the record in front of the media that Kelsey Mitchell is one of one. And she has never used that phrase to describe Caitlin Clark, not once. Let me say it back to you in case you missed it the first time. Stephanie White believes Kelsey Mitchell is the most unique, most irreplaceable, most valuable player on the Indiana Fever roster. And Caitlin Clark is sitting at home with an ankle injury. Watching this press conference, realizing that the head coach she is supposed to trust just publicly anointed someone else as the face of the franchise. And here's what makes this so much worse for Caitlin. Aliyah Boston was sitting right next to Stephanie White during this entire press conference. Aliyah heard every word of Stephanie White's monologue about Kelsey. Aliyah had multiple opportunities to redirect the conversation, to mention Caitlin's name, to remind everyone that Caitlin is still the engine of this offense when she is healthy, and Aliyah did not do it, not once. Instead, Aliyah talked about how proud she was of the group. She talked about how the team executed down the stretch. She talked about KK's block on defense. She talked about Ty Harris hitting clutch shots. She talked about her own three-point shooting. And she did not mention Caitlin Clark's name a single time. Aliyah Boston just sat next to Stephanie White, nodded along with the new hierarchy, and made it clear that she is on board with Kelsey Mitchell being the leader of this team. That is not an accident. That is not an oversight. That is a deliberate choice. Aliyah Boston is the second most important player on this roster when everyone is healthy, and she just publicly sided with Stephanie White's vision of a Kelsey Mitchell-led team instead of defending the Caitlin Clark-led team that got them to the playoffs last season. Let me walk you through exactly what happened tactically in this game, because the on-court decisions Stephanie White made are just as revealing as the words she said at the podium. Indiana played Phoenix in a back-and-forth, grinded-out game that came down to the final 3 minutes. Phoenix is a transition team. They want to run, they want to get out in the open floor and create easy buckets before the defense is set. Stephanie White knew this, so what did she do? She slowed the game down. She put the ball in Kelsey Mitchell's hands and told her to go one-on-one in isolation. No Caitlin Clark pick-and-rolls, no drive-and-kick actions to shooters, no pace-and-space offense. Just Kelsey Mitchell, one defender, and 20 seconds on the shot clock. And it worked. Kelsey hit a step-back three with a hand in her face. Kelsey drove baseline and kicked it out to Ty Harris for another three. Kelsey attacked downhill, absorbed contact, and finished through a foul. This is the offense Stephanie White wants to run. This is the identity she wants this team to have. And it is the exact opposite of the offense Caitlin Clark thrives in. Caitlin Clark is not a pure isolation scorer. She is a playmaker. She is a transition creator. She is someone who makes everyone around her better by pushing the pace, finding open shooters, and collapsing defenses with her gravity. Stephanie White does not want that offense. She wants a half-court, isolation-heavy, grinded-out system where Kelsey Mitchell takes 30 shots per game and everyone else spaces the floor. And here's the part that should terrify you if you are a Caitlin Clark fan. That system works. Indiana just beat Phoenix using that system. They just beat a playoff team in a close game by putting the ball in Kelsey's hands and letting her cook. Stephanie White now has proof of concept. She now has film she can point to when Caitlin comes back and asks why the offense looks completely different. She can say, "We won without you. We won by playing through Kelsey. Why would we change it now?" And let me be entirely clear about something else. Stephanie White did not coach a perfect game. She made multiple mistakes down the stretch that almost cost Indiana the win. Indiana went on a 13-0 run in the third quarter by playing a box-and-one zone defense that completely shut down Phoenix's ball movement. And then Stephanie White abandoned that zone in the fourth quarter for no discernible reason. Phoenix immediately went on a run. Indiana's lead evaporated. The game turned into a one-possession battle in the final 2 minutes. And the only reason Indiana survived is because Kelsey Mitchell hit 2 massive shots in crunch time to bail out Stephanie White's questionable coaching decisions. This is a pattern we have seen before. Stephanie White makes rotational mistakes, makes defensive scheme mistakes, makes timeout mistakes, and then Kelsey Mitchell or Aliyah Boston make a huge individual play to cover it up. And instead of acknowledging her own errors, Stephanie White goes to the podium and praises the players who saved her. That is what happened in this game. Kelsey Mitchell saved Stephanie White, and Stephanie White responded by giving Kelsey the most effusive praise she has ever given to any player on this roster. Now let me show you what Aliyah Boston said in that same press conference, because of what it reveals about who is actually in charge of this locker room right now.
Yeah, I mean, I just alluded to the fact that it's a nice show for everybody when there's lots of made shots, but that we have to lock in on the defensive end, right? I mean, we were a little loose, we were a little soft, and I felt like that they were playing tougher and more physical than us.
Listen to what Aliyah just said. I think for me, just making sure that I'm efficient, shoot the ball with confidence, but just be a great post presence. We know that a T likes to facilitate. So for me, just try to make her job hard, make her more of a scorer tonight, and just be me. Aliyah is talking about Alyssa Thomas. She is talking about Phoenix's best playmaker. She is talking about the tactical adjustments Indiana made to force Alyssa Thomas to score instead of facilitating for her teammates. That is smart basketball analysis. That is the kind of detailed, thoughtful answer you want to hear from your starting center. But here is what Aliyah did not say. She did not say, we are excited to get Caitlin back so we can open up the offense again. She did not say, this system is temporary until Caitlin is healthy. She did not say, we miss Caitlin's playmaking and we cannot wait to have her back on the floor. Aliyah talked about the adjustments the team made without Caitlin. She talked about how comfortable she is shooting threes now. She talked about how the team is learning to close out tight games. She talked about everything except Caitlin Clark, and that silence is louder than anything she actually said. Aliyah Boston is not a villain in this story. Let me be clear about that. Aliyah is doing exactly what a smart veteran does when she sees the power dynamics shifting inside her organization. She is reading the room. She is aligning herself with the head coach. She is supporting her teammates who are on the floor right now instead of pining for the player who is sitting at home. That is smart politics. That is how you survive in a league where head coaches have all the power and players get traded if they make too much noise. But it is also a betrayal of Caitlin Clark. Because Caitlin is the reason this team made the playoffs last season. Caitlin is the reason this franchise went from laughingstock to legitimate contender in 1 year. Caitlin is the reason Aliyah Boston got national attention, got all-star votes, got recognition as one of the best young centers in the league. And now that Caitlin is injured and vulnerable, Aliyah is siding with the coach who is systematically erasing Caitlin from the identity of this team. That is the cold, brutal reality of professional sports. Loyalty lasts exactly as long as it is convenient, and right now it is not convenient for Aliyah Boston to defend Caitlin Clark. Let me escalate this for you because what Stephanie White is doing is not just a temporary adjustment. This is a deliberate, calculated, long-term strategy to rebuild this team's identity around a player she actually wants to coach. Stephanie White inherited a Caitlin Clark-led team. She did not ask for that team. She did not design that team. She did not recruit that team. She walked into a situation where the franchise had already decided that Caitlin Clark was the face of the organization, and Stephanie White was expected to build around her. And Stephanie White does not want to build around Caitlin Clark. She wants to build around Kelsey Mitchell. So she has spent the first half of this season slowly, methodically shifting the offense away from Caitlin's strengths and toward Kelsey's strengths. She has reduced Caitlin's pick-and-roll possessions. She has increased Kelsey's isolation possessions. She has slowed the pace. She has emphasized half-court execution over transition opportunities. And now that Caitlin is injured and cannot push back, Stephanie White is accelerating that shift. She's installing the offense she actually wants. She's giving Kelsey the keys to the franchise. And she is doing it publicly, loudly, deliberately, so that when Caitlin comes back, there is no ambiguity about who this team belongs to. And here's the part that nobody in the mainstream media is willing to say out loud because they are terrified of the backlash. Stephanie White is not wrong. Kelsey Mitchell is playing like an absolute superstar right now. She is scoring 25+ points per game. She is hitting step-back threes with defenders draped all over her. She is finishing through contact at the rim. She is making the drive and kick passes that create open threes for her teammates. She is playing with confidence, with aggression, with the kind of fearless shot-making that you cannot teach. If you just watch the last 3 games in a vacuum, if you ignore everything that happened before Caitlin got injured, you would absolutely say that Kelsey Mitchell is the best player on this team right now. The problem is that this is not happening in a vacuum. This is happening because Stephanie White deliberately designed an offense that maximizes Kelsey's strengths and minimizes Caitlin's strengths. This is happening because Stephanie White gave Kelsey 30 shot attempts per game and told her to go be the franchise player. This is happening because Stephanie White wanted this to happen. And now that it is working, Stephanie White is using these 3 games as proof that her vision for the team is correct. But let me tell you what is going to happen when Caitlin Clark comes back. Caitlin is going to walk into the locker room and realize that the entire offensive system has been redesigned without her input. She is going to watch film and see that Kelsey is taking 30 shots per game while she was out. She is going to sit in the first team meeting and hear Stephanie White talk about how well the team executed in crunch time by playing through Kelsey's isolation scoring. And Caitlin is going to have a choice. She can either accept her new role as a secondary playmaker in a Kelsey Mitchell-led offense, or she can push back and demand that the team goes back to the pace and space system that made them successful last season. And if Caitlin pushes back, Stephanie White is going to have all the ammunition she needs to shut that conversation down. She is going to point to the Phoenix game. She is going to point to Kelsey's scoring numbers. She is going to point to the fact that the team won without Caitlin on the floor. And she is going to say, why would we change what is working? That is not coaching. That is sabotage. Stephanie White is using Caitlin Clark's injury as an opportunity to install the offense she wanted all along, and she is doing it in a way that makes it almost impossible for Caitlin to push back without looking selfish.
I don't know if you can, really. She's one of one. She's the fastest player in the league with the ball in her hand. I don't know if you can, really.
If Caitlin comes back and demands more touches, more pick and rolls, more transition opportunities, Stephanie White can frame that as Caitlin being unwilling to sacrifice for the team. If Caitlin complains about her role, Stephanie White can point to the wins the team got without her and say, "We do not need you to be the primary ball handler anymore." Stephanie White is boxing Caitlin into a corner. And the most brutal part is that Aliyah Boston and the rest of the roster are going along with it because they see which way the wind is blowing and they do not want to be on the wrong side of the head coach. Let me give you the pattern of behavior that proves this is not a one-time thing. This is the third time Stephanie White has made a decision that prioritizes Kelsey Mitchell over Caitlin Clark. 3 times. Let that sink in. The first time was in the season opener, when Stephanie White reduced Caitlin's minutes in the fourth quarter and gave those minutes to Kelsey so Kelsey could hunt her shot in isolation. The second time was 2 weeks ago, when Stephanie White ran a play in the final possession of a tied game that was designed for Kelsey to take the last shot instead of Caitlin. Kelsey missed. Indiana lost. Stephanie White took zero accountability in the press conference and instead praised Kelsey for being aggressive. And now this is the third time. Stephanie White is using Caitlin's injury to completely redesign the offense around Kelsey's isolation scoring, and she is doing it publicly so there is no ambiguity about her intentions. 3 games, 3 identical decisions. 3 times Stephanie White chose Kelsey over Caitlin, and every single time Caitlin paid the price. And let me tell you who else is complicit in this. The Indiana Fever front office, the general manager, assistant coaches, the player development staff, every single person in that organization who has watched Stephanie White systematically reduce Caitlin Clark's role and said nothing. They have stayed silent. They have let Stephanie White do whatever she wants. They have allowed the head coach to prioritize her own vision over the franchise player who sold out arenas, who brought national attention to the team, who made the Fever relevant again after years of being a bottom feeder. The front office is complicit because they hired Stephanie White knowing full well that she did not want to coach a Caitlin Clark-led team. They hired her anyway. They gave her the power. And now they are watching her dismantle everything Caitlin built last season, and they are doing nothing to stop it. Receipts coming. Because when this team misses the playoffs, when Caitlin demands a trade, when the fan base turns on the organization, every single one of those enablers is going to pretend they had no idea this was happening. And I am going to have the footage to prove they knew exactly what was happening and chose to stay silent. And here is what this is costing Caitlin Clark. Caitlin is 22 years old. She is in the middle of her prime. She just had the best rookie season in WNBA history. She was the Rookie of the Year. She was an all-star. She was the reason the Fever made the playoffs for the first time in years. And now, instead of building on that success, instead of designing an offense that maximizes her playmaking and her shooting and her basketball IQ, Stephanie White is burning Caitlin's prime by forcing her into a secondary role in an offense that does not fit her skill set. Caitlin Clark's prime is being wasted. That is what Kelsey Mitchell's ascension is costing. That is what Stephanie White's stubbornness is costing. That is what the front office's silence is costing. Caitlin Clark is one of the most talented players in WNBA history, and she is being systematically marginalized by a head coach who does not believe in her and a front office that does not have the courage to stop it. Let me show you one more clip, because of what it proves about who is actually running this team right now.
Aliyah, it's obviously nice to see you back out there. What was your mindset going into tonight? Because you did look pretty comfortable out there.
Yeah, I think for me, just making sure that I'm efficient, shoot the ball with confidence, but just be a great post presence. We know that AT likes to facilitate, so for me, just trying to make her job hard, make her more of a scorer tonight, and just be me.
Listen to what Stephanie White just said. We were a little loose, we were a little soft. I felt like they were playing tougher and more physical than us. That is coach speak for my team was not executing the game plan I gave them. Stephanie White is admitting that Indiana was not ready to play in the first half. They were not locked in defensively. They were not physical. They let Phoenix dictate the tempo. And whose job is it to make sure the team is ready to play? The head coach, whose job is it to make sure the team is locked in defensively from the opening tip? The head coach, whose job is it to prepare the team for the opponent's physicality? The head coach. Stephanie White just admitted that she did not have her team ready to play, and then she turned around and praised the players for bailing her out in the second half. That is a pattern. That is a deliberate strategy. Stephanie White makes mistakes, and then she deflects accountability by praising the players who covered up those mistakes. And the players go along with it because they know that if they call out the coach, they are the ones who will get benched. Now let me give you the 5 predictions I am staking on this video. These are not guesses. These are not hot takes. These are specific, falsifiable predictions that you can come back and check in 2 weeks, in 1 month, in 3 months. And if I am wrong, you can roast me in the comments. But if I am right, I want every single person watching this video to come back and tell me. Prediction number 1. Stephanie White is going to keep her job through the end of this season no matter what happens, even if Indiana misses the playoffs. Even if Caitlin demands a trade, even if the fan base revolts. The front office is not going to fire Stephanie White because they do not want to admit they made a mistake by hiring her in the first place. If Stephanie White is still the head coach of the Indiana Fever on October 1st, I want every single person to come back to this video and tell me I called it. Prediction number 2. Caitlin Clark is going to average fewer than 15 shot attempts per game in her first 3 games back from injury. Fewer than 15. Save this clip. Stephanie White is going to ease Caitlin back into the rotation by giving her a reduced role, and she is going to frame it as managing Caitlin's minutes to protect her ankle. But the real reason is that Stephanie White wants to keep the offense running through Kelsey Mitchell, and the only way to do that is to limit Caitlin's touches. Watch the first 3 games after Caitlin comes back. Count the shot attempts. If Caitlin averages fewer than 15, come back and tell me I was right. Prediction number 3. The Indiana Fever are going to trade Kelsey Mitchell before the start of next season, not Caitlin, Kelsey, because once Caitlin is healthy and back in the starting lineup, this offense is not going to work. You cannot have 2 ball-dominant guards who both need 30 shots per game to be effective. Someone has to go. And the front office is not going to trade the franchise player who sells out arenas and brings national attention to the team. They are going to trade Kelsey Mitchell to a team that will let her be the primary scorer, and they are going to frame it as getting assets back to build around Caitlin. Watch the offseason. If Kelsey gets traded, come back to this video and tell me I saw it coming. Prediction number 4. The story is going to break wide open when a national reporter runs an article about the tension between Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White. That article is already being written. The reporter is already talking to sources inside the organization. The front office is already trying to do damage control. And when that article drops, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, it is going to confirm everything I just said in this video. It is going to detail the offensive system changes. It is going to quote anonymous players talking about the awkward dynamic in the locker room. It is going to force the front office to make a public statement defending Stephanie White. And when that happens, I want every single person to come back to this video and acknowledge that I told you this was coming before anyone else did. Prediction number 5. The Indiana Fever are going to miss the playoffs this season. They are going to finish 9th in the standings. They are going to lose a play-in game in heartbreaking fashion, and the entire basketball world is going to blame Caitlin Clark's injury for derailing the season. But the real reason they missed the playoffs is because Stephanie White destroyed the offensive system that made them successful last year, and she did it in the middle of the season when there was no time to rebuild. Mark this video. Save this timestamp. If Indiana misses the playoffs, come back and tell me I called it in May. And here is the closing emotional beat that I need every single person watching this video to sit with. Caitlin Clark is at home right now, rehabbing her ankle, watching film of these last 3 games, and realizing that the team she built is being taken away from her. She is watching Kelsey Mitchell take 30 shots per game. She is watching Stephanie White praise Kelsey as one of one. She is watching Aliyah Boston nod along with the new hierarchy. And she is realizing that when she comes back, she is not going to be the face of this franchise anymore. She is going to be a role player in someone else's offense. That is the brutal, undeniable reality of what just happened. Caitlin Clark is being erased from her own team. And the worst part is that she cannot do anything about it until she is healthy enough to step back on the floor and fight for her role back. Now let me give you the 3-layer call to action, because I need you to do more than just watch this video and move on. Layer 1. Drop your most honest take in the comments. Is Stephanie White right to build this offense around Kelsey Mitchell, or is she sabotaging Caitlin Clark's development by forcing her into a secondary role? Pick a side, defend it. Tell me why you think I am right or why you think I am completely wrong. Layer 2. Save this comment. Caitlin Clark is going to average fewer than 15 shot attempts per game in her first 3 games back from injury. If I am right by June 1st, come back to this video and tell me. If I am wrong, roast me.
Yeah, I mean, I just alluded to the fact that it's a nice show for everybody when there's lots of made shots, but that we have to lock in on the defensive end, right? I mean, you know, we were a little loose, we were a little soft, and I felt like that they were playing tougher and more physical than us.
I will take the accountability. Layer 3, tag the friend who keeps telling you that Kelsey Mitchell is better than Caitlin Clark. Make them watch this video. Make them explain why Stephanie White has never praised Caitlin the way she just praised Kelsey. Make them defend the new hierarchy. And then tell me in the comments what they said. And here is what is coming next. Tomorrow we are breaking down the Caitlin Clark injury timeline and what it means for her free agency leverage in 2 years. If the Fever keep treating her like a secondary piece, Caitlin is going to have every reason to leave when her contract is up. And I am going to walk through exactly which teams are going to make a run at her. If you are not subscribed, you are going to miss it. Hit the bell, hit the like button. Share this video with every single Caitlin Clark fan who needs to see what is actually happening inside this organization. This is Hoops Vision Daily. We will see you in the next video.